There's one bit of news which isn't news, but I'm going to tell you about it off air. But we are going to now relive, not really by watching much of it, but because I watched a bit of it this morning, quite a lot of it actually. It's terrible. Heroes of Wrestling. Now,
Oh my God!
it's just let me I've got a bit of preamble for you, and I've got a little fact that you don't know that I've sort of teed you up with beforehand. Held on October 10th. 1999 at Casino Magic in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. Heroes of Wrestling, a nostalgia-themed wrestling event featuring stars some 10 to 20 years beyond their prime, with a couple of exceptions, is infamous for foisting off onto the 29,000 pay-per-view buyers. Apparently 40,000 was the break-even point, and 2,300 fans, and by fans probably mostly just people they corralled out the casino for free, because it was a heavily papered event as well. Live in attendance, quite possibly the worst professional wrestling event in the medium's history. Heroes of Wrestling was a disaster from the off, including a deeply inebriated Jake the Snake Roberts, the worst match in recorded history, horrendous production values top to bottom, and some other stuff that was also just crap. First off, Dutch, you have been described as possibly the only...
Why don't you tell me you hated this pay-per-view without telling me you hate...
I can tell you if you like. Oh, it's awful. Man.
Go ahead.
Do you know, actually, you actually inspired me, and we'll get to why in a bit, inspired me to think of this as this week's topic. Before, and I'll tell you when that comes up. But first off, you've been described as possibly the only good thing on that pay-per-view. For people who don't know, Dutch was doing the colour commentary that night. And before we get into the event itself, do you remember who came up to you with the concept of the event, your fee for the evening, what and who you were promised would be working commentary with you, and who would be working in the ring that didn't happen, and who would be appearing in the event that eventually pulled out?
I forgot who called me about it. Some guy that he was connected with the event, but they were looking for a color commentator, and I was going to be working with Gordon Soley. So I said, okay. And then they wanted to know, this is how you get booked in wrestling, like anything else. What do you want in terms of compensation? And I didn't know they had all this trouble before. I forgot what it was. It was either 2,000 or 2,500, because I would be out there the entire show. So they said, okay, I think I got that. I don't know, I got something like that. But at the last minute, Gordon Soley had a medical emergency, and he couldn't come.
Or a premonition.
All right. Maybe he said later, I'm glad I got sick. I missed that. But he didn't show up. And they put this other announcer with me called, and I still remember his name, Randy Bloomingstone or Bloomingdale.
Rosenbloom. Randy Rosenbloom.
Randy Rosenbloom. And I had no idea he didn't know anything about wrestling. He didn't tell me. I'm assuming that he is the lead announcer on a professional wrestling pay-per-view. So therefore, what qualifies him to do this job? And I didn't question him.
He had the tux.
I mean, he didn't say.
He had the suit.
Huh? He had something. And we went out there, and it didn't take me long before I realized this guy don't know jack shit about anything. That's probably why the commentary, somebody said it was good. Hell, a babbling baby would have been good against this guy, because he knew nothing. I don't know what he called a slam. What did he call that? He called something.
I've got a couple of examples for you. So Randy Rosenbloom was who you ended up commentating with instead of Gordon Soley. An LA sports commentator who knew so little about wrestling, he referred to a drop kick as a flying leg kick and an arm drag as a reverse slam takedown. And I haven't written this, but I saw this as well. He also called a snake eyes, you know, the thing over the ropes, a body slam.
Well, he knew nothing. And so I just got to talking, and I was hoping maybe people can go deaf when he's talking so they wouldn't hear what he was saying. But I will say that this pay-per-view was so bad. You ever hear something that's so bad it actually kind of good? And it is so bad now it's now taken on a status of its own because it's like a cult classic. It is that bad.
Plan 9 from Outer Space, the wrestling version. It's like Ed Wood directed it.
Ed Wood, who was he the director?
You know who I mean, don't you? He's like the director of the worst films of all time. I've seen the film as well with George Steele, in fact. And Bill Murray's in it, and Johnny Depp plays Ed Wood.
Ed Wood was the director.
Ed Wood was the awful director of the worst films of all time.
I read a story about him one time. He would go to get financing for his next movie, and they'd always say, "Your last movie was horrible." And he said, "Yes, but the next one will be better." Mm-hmm. He was the ultimate optimist. And his Ed Wood, I saw the movie. I thought it was great. That's a cult classic too. Mm-hmm. If you get a chance to see Ed Wood, it's a little bit tongue in cheek, but if you get it, you get it. But this, I didn't know. Before the guys went out to the ring, I never went back to the dressing room and met them. I just went to the desk. I spent most of my time around the desk. And Rosenbloom, he didn't show up to about 30 minutes before the show started, I think. And I introduced myself and sat down, and we had the cameraman in front of us, and nobody even really talked to me about anything. It was produced badly. I don't know who produced it. But I never met the producer. I never met the truck. I never met the director. I never met the cameraman other than the one right in front of me. And it was just a fly by your seat pants all the way through it. And when you see it, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Even the wrestlers were horrible because they had no direction either.
There's a couple of things I want to get to with the commentary as well. I think Rosenbloom's uselessness started rubbing off on you slightly with your commentary, because at the end of the first match, instead of saying you don't have to be a brain surgeon to da-da-da-da, you say you don't have to be a brain-sized scientist. And then you just sort of just trail off and then just move on. But it's just...
Well, I don't remember saying that, but...
It was funny.
And I could have said, I think I was going to say brain scientist.
Yes.
I think that's what I was going to say.
And this is the bit I blacked out for you, so you don't know who it is. Do you know who was going to be the original colour commentator for the event? Not Gordon Soley, he would have been play-by-play. The original colour commentator.
No. Who?
Ted DiBiase.
Oh.
But wouldn't you know, he had maybe Jesus told him not to turn up and in a prayer.
Okay, God is going to come down and strike you for saying that.
Well, the funny
I want you to know that.
The irony is that this event was held in Mississippi, and you know, Ted loves hanging about in Mississippi these days. But anyway, he didn't turn up for this one.
What's the latest in that case?
Nothing new. Sadly, I'm almost living for information on the Ted DiBiase case. I love it.